Okay, let's do another color contrast one. And if you are just jumping right into this one as your first tutorial, I've done a couple things. First of all, I've got a photograph laid onto my project. I've got my text on here, and I've created a layer group where I'm adding a bunch of different adjustment layers to create color contrast. So to create a layer group, you can either click on the little button down here for create a new group, or come up here to your flyout and choose new group. So with that new group, not new, but with my color group selected, I'm going to come down here to my adjustment layers. It looks like a little tuxedo cookie. And this time, instead of using hue and saturation, let's try vibrance. So vibrance is the newer, more subtle way of adjusting or boosting your color. So you still have the saturation, so I could still push this over and make it nuclear. I'm going to bring that back. Vibrance is a little bit more subtle, so you can see if I go all the way over, it still doesn't look like a nuclear bomb going off. It just looks, a little bit too green, so I'm going to dial that back down. But you can see this is much more subtle, and this works really well when you're working with people or pictures of people, because it's not going to make them look like Oompa Loompas or orange. So if there's people in the picture, for sure use vibrance. So I'm going to just boost that up. Just wanted to show you that real quickly. Now another thing that I like to do is throw a black and white filter on there. So our black and white adjustment layer. So let's go to another adjustment layer, and we're going to choose black and white and make sure that it's on top here. So that looks pretty cool. But you'll notice that everything is kind of the same gray. Whereas I want these dandelions to kind of pop or stand out. So with the properties for the black and white adjustment layer selected, you've got this little hand. It's the, modify the sliders. And I'm going to go ahead and grab that, and I'm going to come out here and click and drag on the dandelion. If you go too far, it's going to look kind of weird, but you can see if I drag this back, my display is giving me a little trouble. It's basically what it's doing is it's moving this yellow slider back and forth. And so I'm going to just dial it up a little, and you can see we've got this really, nicer tone to the dandelion. It's kind of popping now. Okay, so now I've got a lot of contrast between the text and the background because of the color contrast. There's a couple things you can do to take this a little bit further and get a little bit more creative. You could be done and be happy with that. But an adjustment layer automatically comes with this thing called a mask, this little white thing. And it allows you to hide and show parts of that adjustment layer. So for example, let's say I wanted some color in the front here. Before I do this, I want to do two different examples. So let's take this layer, this adjustment layer, and let's duplicate it. I'm going to do Control J, and I'm going to hide one of them and come back to this first one. Okay, so this one is going to be a different example. So this first one, make sure that you have the mask selected. And what I want to do is I want to just make some of the image color and some of it black and white. So I'm going to come over here to the gradient tool. You might see the paint bucket on top. So if you see a paint bucket, click and hold and you'll get to the gradient tool. Otherwise, you might see the gradient tool. So I'm going to go ahead and select that. I'm going to come up here to my gradient options in the options bar. I'm going to click on this little arrow next to it, and I want to choose black and white. So I'm going to choose black and white. And now I've got a black and white adjustment layer. Black and white gradient. And I'm going to click and drag above the title down in here to the field. Now I've got the color, and this is black and white, and that's actually the opposite of what I wanted. No big deal. This time I'm going to click in the field and come up here right above the text. And notice I kind of did it at an angle because I noticed that the horizon line for this little field is at an angle. So you can do this as many times as you want until you get just the right effect that you're looking for. So I think what I wanted was the bottom to be in full color and the edge of this field right here to be in black and white. There we go. That's what I wanted. So that kind of looks neat. We've got the color up here. We've got color down here. You don't get as much contrast because now your viewer is going to say, well, should I be looking at the color up here or color down there? So it's a little confusing. Cool technique. Might be what you're looking for, but in this case, I'm going to just hide this and show you another example. So let's go back up here to that copy of the black and white adjustment layer, turn it back on. And this time, instead of poking a large hole in the black and white gradient, we're just going to do a small one right on this flower. So let's paint this one on. Let's grab the paint bucket, or brush. So grab the paintbrush. Come down here and make sure that your colors are back to the default of black and white. There's a button right next to the color picker here that changes it back to the default. Or you can just hit D, and that switches it back to the default. As you can see from my other example, the part that made part of the adjustment layer transparent was black, so I want to switch to black. To do that with a button, you can hit this little arrow. Double-headed arrow switches, or the keyboard shortcut is X. So I wanted a black paintbrush. I'm making sure that my adjustment layer is selected, and I'm going to come down here and paint this flower on. Now, if I start clicking, you can see that that's a really small brush, so I'm going to use the bracket keys to make that bigger. You can also come up here to your brush size and make it bigger this way. I find this a little bit more intuitive with the brackets. Oopsie. Okay, so I'm going to start painting that on. Now, I recommend that you actually take your opacity and drag this down so that you can do it slowly. So I'm going to paint up here, get these little parts of the dandelion. And in the middle, I'm going to do it a couple times so that it's nice and vibrant in the middle. And as it goes out, it's maybe a little less vibrant. Okay. So now, with that selected, you can see that that color is going to pop, and then we've got this yellow. I think it might be a good idea to move my title. So I'm going to select my title, and I'm just going to move it down next to the flower. So now I've got this real emphasis down here, or focal point, and I'm using it with color. The color of the dandelion and the color of the text. And that really helps focus the viewer on my focal point. And that's the whole idea of this lesson.